At 65 years old, I had exactly $37,000 to my name. 37,000. After 4 decades in the corporate world, after climbing the ladder, missing my kids' baseball games, skipping family vacations, working through 3 presidents and a recession. The American dream had sold me a bill of goods, and I'd paid the full price in the currency that mattered most: time. I'm Robert. I'm 68 now, and what I'm about to tell you won't make the financial media happy, because this story proves that everything we've been told about retirement is either incomplete or a lie. And if you're anywhere near my age, or if you're watching this wondering if you're on track, I need you to stay with me for the next few minutes. Not to subscribe, not to like, not to click anything. Just stay here. Because what I discovered in those 3 years between 65 and now will either confirm your worst fears or give you a lifeline you didn't know existed. Let me take you back. It's 1987. I'm a 29-year-old kid in suburban Chicago, wearing a tie that's too tight, sitting in a cubicle under fluorescent lights. I just got hired at a Fortune 500 manufacturing company. Good benefits, pension, the works. My boss pulls me into his office on day 2 and says, "Robert, if you want to make something of yourself here, you need to understand the game." He hands me a pamphlet about our 401k plan, talks about vesting schedules, matches, compound interest. I'm nodding like I understand, but I'm really just thinking about the paycheck. 2 weeks later, I get my first deposit, and I do what millions of Americans did in the 1980s. I take that money and I spend it, pay rent, buy groceries, maybe grab a beer with the guys on Friday night. I was making about $32,000 a year back then, and it felt like enough to get by. So I never put anything into that 401k. Not even the employer match. I just didn't see the point. I had time, right? I was 29. I'd start saving later. 30 years later, 3 decades of later, I'm sitting in a different chair. Corner office, bigger paycheck, but the same fundamental mistake baked into my entire career. Because somewhere along the way, later became a lifestyle. I tell myself, next year when I get the promotion, I'll maximize my 401k. Then the promotion came, and there was always something else. A mortgage, a second car, college funds for the kids. I was doing the right thing, I thought, being responsible, providing for my family. But I was doing it at the cost of my own future. The irony is that I was climbing higher and higher. My salary went from $32,000 to $42,000, then to $67,000, then to low 6 figures. But the percentage I was saving, it stayed almost exactly where it was in 1987. Close to nothing. I was trapped in what I call the golden handcuff economy. Good enough paycheck to feel secure. Bad enough retirement planning to stay vulnerable forever. And then in 2008, the financial crisis hit. Our pension, the one thing we thought was guaranteed, got gutted. The company froze it. Suddenly, that safety net I'd counted on for 4 decades was gone. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with my wife, staring at statements that showed me what my 401k had become. It was maybe $200,000. For someone my age, for someone who'd been working since 1987, it should have been 10 times that, maybe more. I felt my stomach drop, but I also thought, I still have time. I've got 7 years until 65. I can fix this. So that's what I told myself. I could fix it. Then my best friend died, David. We'd met at the company in 1989, 2 weeks after I started. We sat next to each other for the first 5 years until they moved departments around. But we stayed close, lunches, weekend beers. For 30 years, this guy was my sounding board, my escape valve from the pressure cooker of corporate life. And on a Tuesday in March 2018, when I was 60 years old, David had a heart attack. He was 62, 2 years older than me. At his funeral, I sat in the pew, and I did something I hadn't done in maybe 15 years. I cried. Not just sad tears, angry tears. Because sitting there, I realized that David and I had made the exact same bargain with exactly the same force. Work now, live later. Be responsible now, take the trip later. Skip the vacation now, save for retirement later. And David didn't make it till later. He died in his office, at his desk, at 62 years old. That should have been my wake-up call right then. But it wasn't. I went back to work, kept grinding, told myself I'd have time to process it all when I retired. And then, 2 years after David's funeral, I had a health scare of my own. Nothing life-threatening, thank God, but serious enough. Chest pains that sent me to the hospital at 3 a.m. Turns out it was just anxiety, stress-induced. But for 8 hours that night, lying in that hospital bed, I genuinely thought I might be the next David. I thought I might actually die at my desk without ever taking the sabbatical I always planned. Without ever really knowing my grandkids. Without ever sitting on a porch for an afternoon and just breathing without calculating return on investment. And that night changed everything. Because at 64 years old, I finally realized the truth. I realized I'd been operating under a fundamental lie. The lie that if I just deferred everything, my joy, my time, my health, my presence, if I just deferred all of it until 65, then I'd have a magical year where everything would be fine. I'd be set. I'd have enough money, enough time, enough energy to finally live. But that's not how life works. Your body doesn't get a memo that you've turned 65. Your health doesn't suddenly repair itself because you've hit a number. Your relationship with your kids doesn't automatically reconnect because now you have free time to spend with them. You can't compress 40 years of presence into the 20 years you have left. And more than that, you realize, sitting in that hospital bed, your heart racing, your wife holding your hand, you realize that 65 might never come. You might end up like David. So I did something I hadn't done in decades. I got quiet. I actually looked at my life, and I started digging through old boxes in my garage, looking for I don't even know what. Answers, maybe. Proof that I'd done something right somewhere. And I found this. It's a pay stub from 1987, my very first pay stub from the company. It's crumpled, faded, the kind of thing you'd normally throw away. But on the back, in faded pencil, there's a note. My handwriting from when I was 29. It says, "Pay yourself first. 20% before anything else. This is the rule." I don't even remember writing it, but I remember who told me to write it. It was my dad. He gave me that advice before I took the job. He said, "Robert, whatever you do, no matter what else happens, you take 20% off the top before you spend a single dime on anything else. That 20% is sacred. That's your future." And I listened to him for maybe 2 weeks. Then real life happened. Rent, bills, a girl I wanted to impress, beers with the guys. And that 20% rule got buried under 36 years of excuses. But holding that crumpled pay stub, sitting in my garage at 64 years old, I did the math for the first time. The real, honest-to-God math. If I'd taken my dad's advice seriously, if I'd actually taken 20% of every paycheck from 1987 to 2023, and if I'd invested that money in something boring and safe like an index fund, like an S&P 500 fund that historically returns about 10% a year, I would have had somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 million by now. $4 million. I was sitting on the greatest opportunity of my life, and I'd blown it because I wanted to grab beers with the guys on Friday nights. Now, I'm not telling you that story to make myself feel worse than I already did. I already knew I'd screwed up. But I'm telling you that story because in that moment, I made a decision. I decided that even though I was at 64, even though I was supposedly too late, even though conventional wisdom says you can't make it back from that kind of hole, I was going to try anyway. I was going to take the pay yourself first rule seriously. Not the fantasy version where I'd been doing it all along. The real version, starting from where I actually was. Broke, behind, but maybe not completely out of the game. At 65, I had that $200,000 I mentioned. Social Security wasn't going to start until 67. I'd have to bridge 2 years somehow. I was officially retired in the eyes of everyone around me, but I felt more desperate than I had in years. So here's what I did. I found consulting work, not a full-time job. I didn't go back to the office, but I leveraged the 40 years I'd spent in manufacturing and finance, and I picked up contract work, projects, short-term gigs. I wasn't making 6 figures anymore, but I was bringing in about $80,000 a year. And this time, I did something radical. I took my dad's advice seriously. I automated 20% of everything that came in. I set up a separate account. The money went straight there before I even saw it, before I could convince myself I needed it for something else. The other 80% I lived on. And I did the same thing with what little I got from my 401k. I rolled it into an index fund and just let it sit there. From 65 to 68, for 3 years, I lived on roughly $64,000 a year after taxes. My house was paid off, thank God. So my mortgage was gone. That helped. My kids were grown. I wasn't trying to impress anyone anymore. I cut cable, stopped eating out, drove my 12-year-old Honda. It wasn't glamorous, but it was simple. And the money I was automating, that 20%, it went straight into the market. Boring, safe, boring. The S&P 500. Month after month after month, buying pieces of America's biggest companies. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Tesla. Every single month, $1,300 would leave my consulting income and go straight into those index funds. And I just let it compound. Here's where the math gets interesting. When I started this 3-year sprint, the market was recovering from the 2020 collapse. There was a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty. A lot of people told me I was crazy to be investing aggressively at 65. You should be moving to bonds, Robert. You should be lowering your risk. But I did the opposite. I went all in on stocks because I had nothing to lose. I was already late to the game. The only way I could possibly catch up was if I took a calculated risk. And I had about 15 years before I'd actually need that money, before I'd have to live off these investments. 15 years is a long time for compound interest to work its magic. The first year, my $200,000 plus my new contributions gave me a portfolio of about $240,000. Not bad. The second year, the market was up. My portfolio hit $300,000. That second year was when I really started to believe this might work. At 66 years old, suddenly I had a $300,000 portfolio. I'd gotten $100,000 richer in a single year, mostly because the market was up and I was disciplined about adding to it. The third year, when I turned 67 and Social Security kicked in, my payments were small. Because I'd waited and because I'd had a modest average income, but combined with my consulting work, I had enough. And the market that year had some volatility, but it ended strong. My portfolio crossed $450,000. At 68 right now, as I'm sitting here telling you this story, I have $1,047,000. I'm a millionaire, not because I won the lottery, not because I made a brilliant investment in cryptocurrency or some startup, just because I did the boring thing. I took 20% off the top. I invested it in the most basic, most predictable wealth-building vehicle available to humans, a low-cost index fund. And I did it consistently for 3 years, while the market did what markets do over the long term. It went up. If I had done this from 1987, I'd be worth $4 million. But at 68, starting from broke, I've hit $1 million. And that's not nothing. That's the difference between living free and living afraid for the rest of my life. But here's the thing they don't tell you about becoming a millionaire at 68. It's not about the money. Or rather, it's about the money, but not in the way you think. Because now I have choices. I can afford to see my grandkids whenever I want. I can take my wife on trips. I can say no to things I don't want to do. I can be present, and that's the real wealth. But I also have something else. I have profound regret, because I realize now, and this is the part that keeps me up at night, I realize that if I just listened to my dad when I was 29, I could have had that $4 million. I could have been retired at 55, 60 at the latest, without ever having to work another day in my life. I could have watched my kids grow up. I could have been there. I could have had David in my life longer, because I could have taken time to really know him, not just grab occasional beers between meetings. The pay yourself first rule isn't just a rule about money. It's a rule about sovereignty. It's about saying, my future matters. My time matters. My presence matters. And when you violate that rule, when you spend everything and save nothing, you're not just making a financial mistake. You're making a spiritual mistake. You're saying, I don't matter. My future version doesn't matter. The people who might want to know me matter, but I don't. That's what I did for 36 years. And now I'm paying for it emotionally, even though I'm paying for it financially. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, okay, Robert, this is great for you, but I'm not 29 anymore. I'm 35, 40, 50. Surely it's too late for me. I need you to understand something. It's not too late. It's always too late to do it perfectly, but it's never too late to do it. If you're 35 and you start putting 20% away, you've got 30 years for compound interest. That's powerful. If you're 45 and you start now, you've got 20 years. Still powerful. If you're 55, you've got 10 years. Less powerful, but still meaningful. And if you're 65, like I was, you've got 15, 20 years before you actually need that money. That's enough time. It's not 4 million enough time, but it's enough. The rule is simple. It doesn't require you to be smart. It doesn't require you to pick individual stocks or understand options trading or any of that complicated stuff. You just need to be honest with yourself about what matters. And then you need to automate it. You need to set up a system where the money goes straight into your future before you can touch it. That's it. That's the one rule that changed everything for me. Not because the math is special. The math isn't special. It's just basic arithmetic applied over time. The rule works because it aligns your present actions with your future needs. It makes the abstract concrete. Every month you're not saying, I should probably save something. You're actually saving something. Every month you're not saying, maybe I'll invest eventually. You're actually investing right now. And here's what I didn't expect when I did this. I didn't expect to feel more alive than I had in 40 years. Because suddenly there was a system in place. Suddenly I wasn't carrying the anxiety of I should be saving, I should be planning, I'm screwing up my future. Suddenly that was happening automatically. And it freed up something in my brain. It freed up the mental space to actually be present, to actually taste my food when I eat it, to actually listen to my wife when she talks instead of thinking about work, to actually be a grandfather, to actually sit on my porch in the afternoon and just be a person instead of always being a worker, always be grinding, always be hustle, hustle, hustle. That's what the pay yourself first rule really gives you. It's not $4 million, though that's nice. It's not $1 million, though that's real and it matters. It's freedom. It's the knowledge that you've taken one fundamental action that ensures you're not going to have to work yourself to death just to survive your own old age. And you know what? That alone is worth doing. Now, I'm not going to tell you it's been easy. These last 3 years I've had to say no to things. I haven't had the newest car. I haven't had the fancy vacations. I've had to do things like insulate my own garage and fix my own plumbing, and watch YouTube videos to teach myself how to patch drywall, because I couldn't afford to hire someone. I've lived lean, and honestly, it's been the most satisfying 3 years I've had since I was 25, because I've been aligned. My actions have matched my values. My present has been invested in my future, literally and figuratively. But the cost of that alignment has been the knowledge of what I gave up, the 36 years, the $4 million, the time with David, the presence with my kids when they were young and actually needed me. That's the real price of not following the pay yourself first rule. It's not about the money. It's about the fact that you're trading your most vibrant years for a future that might never come, or that might come, but you might not have the health or the energy to enjoy it. So here's what I'm asking you to do. I'm not asking you to subscribe to my channel, though you can if you want. I'm not asking you to like this video, or comment down below, or tell me your story. Those things are nice, but they're not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is simpler than that. I'm asking you to look at your paycheck next week. Whenever that next deposit hits your account, I'm asking you to look at it and ask yourself one question. What percentage of this do I actually need to live on? Maybe for you it's 80%. Maybe for you it's 85%. Maybe it's 90%. But whatever that number is, the money that's left, that margin, I'm asking you to treat it as sacred. I'm asking you to automate it, to send it to an account you don't look at, to invest it in something boring and safe that historically goes up over time. Just do it. Not tomorrow. Not after your next promotion. Not when things settle down and you have more money. Right now. Start with 5% if 20% feels too big. Start with something. But start. Because here's what I know from my 68 years on this planet. Time is the only resource you can't buy more of. You can earn more money. You can hustle harder, get a promotion, start a side business, and earn more money. But you cannot earn more time. Every day you wake up with the same amount of time you had yesterday, and you'll never get any back. So the only sensible question is, how do I make sure that I'm not trading all my time for a future that might never come? And the answer is the pay yourself first rule. Because when you do that, you're saying, I'm going to secure my future now so that I don't have to work until I die. I've lived both sides of this story. I lived 36 years on the wrong side, trading my time for a promise. And I've lived 3 years on the right side, being disciplined and present. And I'm telling you right now, from the perspective of a 68-year-old man who knows exactly how much he left on the table, the right side is better. It's so much better. Not because the money is better, though that's real, but because the presence is better, because the integrity is better, because you're not lying to yourself anymore about what matters.